everybody, I wanted to get on here with a fiber arts topic, and this is one that I think we cover a lot in blogs and just general discussions in our Facebook group, but I figured it was a good one. I haven't made a video specifically about this, I think, on YouTube in a while. I think most of my videos that deal more with this are maybe in some of the courses, so here's one on a YouTube video. So one of the questions we usually get asked, like I said, in our Facebook group, and when I say we, I mean like me and the other people in the Facebook group, is about different types of hand-spun yarn and how you might use them for different projects. And I think as spinners, it's easy for us to forget that you once were just a knitter or a crocheter and that you were used to using yarn. And here, I will grab this off the shelf. More, and this is beautiful yarn. This is a sock weight, a merino and alpaca blend. It's going out in one of our subscriptions, and you can see it is a beautiful, standard weight, even plied, silky yarn. And so we're used to dealing with that type of yarn. You start out in the knitting or crocheting world, and then if you go into spinning your own yarn, all of a sudden, well, once you get past the idea of like, how do I even spin yarn? There's this whole world opens up to you on different types of yarn that you can spin. And then all of a sudden, the next logical question, because you know how it is, once you solve one problem, you end up with another problem. So then your next logical question is, well, what do I do with the yarn that is more unusual that I've spun? I happen to have here on my Nitty Knotty a yarn I have recently spun that is going to be going out in one of our subscriptions, and it is a blended together single ply yarn. So you can see it's single ply, and I've got it resting on the Nitty Knotty. So I wet it in cool water. I'm letting it fully dry on my Nitty Knotty to get all of the tension out of the singles, which this is another debated topic. There are lots of different ways that people think that you should handle your yarn after you've spun it. What Mom and I do, and what we prefer, is we spin it, then we wind it from the bobbin onto a Nitty Knotty, like so. And then we just rinse it under cool water, nothing else added to it, and then just let it dry for like at least 24 hours, maybe a day and a half. And you would be absolutely amazed. The twistiest seeming yarn coming off of a bobbin will be so much more chill after it has been wet set, is what we call it, on a Nitty Knotty. So that's what I always teach everybody to do. But sorry, that was a different rabbit hole. What I was wanting to show was this is a single ply yarn, and it's fairly even. So, I mean, there's a little bit of variation, but not too much. It's definitely more even keeled as far as the thickness, and what you're really getting, the variation that would go into an actual finished knitted or crocheted project, is going to be the natural variation between these natural wools in this yarn. So that is one of your more standard approaches to a hand-spun yarn, and how, I mean, I think this would be a beautiful hat. You would get all of that natural color variation throughout your yarn. Two more examples of single ply yarn that I had laying around are, whereas these are the color variation is within the same yarn and it's much more even. On these we have two different, this is a just creamy merino, and this is actually Angora rabbit fiber. So totally, you can see how fuzzy this one is. Totally different idea, and they are lumpy bumpy. I'm pretty sure these were drop spindled a long time ago, so I just had them laying around, but they are all lumpy bumpy, and this actually would make, but you can see they're actually pretty, like they're not that kinky at all. They've been laying around for a while, so I mean, these could knit up and make a really cool textured project, or you could actually just put these two little balls in a shoebox and take a drop spindle, if you wanted, or a spinning wheel, and twist them together. And that is one fun thing about more thick and thin singles. And here I'm twisting it. I promise I'm going to show you what I'm doing. If you two-plied two kind of thick and thin singles, they kind of even each other out like that. So if I was going to do something with these, honestly, I would get a drop spindle and real quick just two-ply these together And you can see how they go from looking really kind of thick and thin and wonky to all of a sudden looking like a much more usable yarn. So that is what I would do with these little singles. Let's see what else I have. So for my last example, I have a variety of thread plied yarn, which is probably one of my favorites and go-tos for more art yarn looking texture. This one you can see was from a thick and thin dyed braid. So, I mean, the yarn itself is beautiful. It's very colorful. And then I took a black thread and thread plied it, and you just get this cool texture. So this is probably, I mean, also you can see it really takes the twist out of it. This yarn is behaving very well at the moment. But there's a slight variation, but you can see it's really not anything overly thick and thin. And the spacing on the thread isn't like super tight and then big, and then super tight and then big. It's very evenly spaced threads. You just get this kind of cool wave. And then that is in just position to this one, which I'm not even sure what fiber this was. It's very fuzzy and it's kind of more primitive feeling. I feel like this was a Sheer 'em to Save 'em more primitive blend yarn, and I did this as part of a class. But you can see it is much more, this was something I think I used when I was filming for one of my courses. You can find on my website for demonstrating thick and thin and then thread plying it. So this one has got very poofs and then thin spots, and then a poof and then a thin spot. And I personally really love this yarn. It knits up really cool. It could make fringe. You can knit it just loosely with like drop stitch, like in the Fisherman Net Cowl that is a free pattern on my website. But this one, the way I used the thread in this was, instead of it being evenly spaced like in this yarn, it's tightly wound here and then like a loose part here, and then tightly wound here and then a loose part here. And I had seen this particular style called in a book, and I'm not sure which book, flame ply, and I think because it looked like a candle flame, which I thought was really cool. And like I said, I'm pretty positive a lot of these little little samples were from my Dream Yarn course. Or the art yarn, there's also a little art yarn course. None of them are expensive. They're all on my website. Crafty Housewife Yarns or Feral Scene. They both go to the same website, depending on which one of those URLs you want to remember. And there's just look for the courses. So anyhow, I don't know, click one of the links around here somewhere. And if you would like more in-depth on how I spun these particular little samples, there's an art yarn specific course. And then there's just a everything about spinning, all the things, fiber arts education course, the Dream Yarn course. And they're both very affordable. So check it out. And then last but not least, this one is not as exaggerated on the thick and thin. This was still a thick and thin single. This feels like it was some really pretty, what was this? I'm drawing a blank. I'm feeling stupid. Cormo, maybe? It's very soft, very chocolatey. This was one from a local farm through the My Local Wool boxes, and I mixed in and just this natural chocolate brown and then like this fun fluorescent faux cashmere mix-ins, and I did little beehives. And the way that you use the thread to make the beehives is you're keeping the thread kind of constant, and then you smush the fiber supply with your hand like that. So you smush it and it makes these really fun little beehives. And it's probably, if I'm gonna do art yarn, and if I'm just having fun with something, like this is honestly, oh, I just dropped it. This is probably exactly the type of yarn I'm going to end up with. Just something natural, something crazy, something with beehives. Like, this is so fun to me, and it's just so fun to add stuff in, and it ends up looking like this, and it's just fantastic. So that is another example of what to do with hand spun yarn. Like I said, with any of the bigger ones, I just always suggest loose knits. I know my friend Christina with Alight Hand Wovens uses this type of yarn in her weaving, which I am not a weaver, so you'll have to look that up and see what she's doing. But she uses all this really cool textured art yarn, which she's amazing in all of her weaving. So please look her up to find out more about that. And of course, if I'm going to talk about art yarn and hand spun yarn, I have to talk about one of my favorite people, Ashley Martineau of Nouveau Her Fiber. And she has these really fun, let's see, what are they called? Wash textile blends. And they're different kind of color collections. And you could use these, they're all like kind of recycled textile. So they're like little pieces of yarn. They're pieces of textile. And so there's lots of different, some are shiny, some are fuzzy textile pieces. You could either lightly blend these in if you had a blending board or a drum carder to add some texture to your yarn to end up with something similar to this. Or you could honestly just put this little bag next to you when you were spinning and just kind of pull off little pieces of it and just kind of add it in as confetti, which honestly, I really like doing it that way. I like doing it that way too. So that's also something fun you can do with hand spun yarn. If you wanted to spin a much more maybe like normal type of yarn, but just add some fun little fuzz and little color, it looks like tweed, like little tweed socks. So you could make some awesome tweed socks. So that is something else you could do to kind of spice up different types of yarn. So honestly, I would just say use your bigger yarn for looser projects, looser knit weaving or like fringe with crochet. I know like more of a boho crochet. I have friends that make fabulous things that way. And then if you were wanting to knit something more standard, like a gloves or a lace pattern or hat, I would spin yarn that is much more even, and then maybe you're just getting your interest in the natural color variation or dyed color variation in your yarn. So I hope that helps. And if you'd like any more information, I have like a million videos on this this YouTube channel, and I also have a lot of information on my website, like I said, in different little specific topic courses, and I think they're all generally between like $8 and $20. So if you wanted more in-depth with homework, specific tiles, courses, please go check out my website. It is, I don't know, not really a rebrand, but I'll make another video rambling about this. Just generally, I wanted a not necessarily fiber art specific umbrella to put Crafty Housewife yarns under, since I've recently written a book more on just kind of indie business. So you can still find my website forever at craftyhousewifeyarns.com, and it's still, like, nothing has changed. All the fiber art stuff is still there. But if you would like to remember a shorter URL, you can also type in Feral Scene, and it will take you to exactly the same website. So nothing has really changed, just it's less letters to type when you're putting it in. So hope that helps, and I hope you have a great day.